The Hog Sty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
Welcome back to the Hog Sty. Another week, another loss. The Redskins fall to 0-2 on the season with the 31-21 loss to the Cowboys. For those of us keeping track, that's 2 straight divisional losses to get the year started, and we are here to deconstruct it so you don't have to. My name's Sean Conti. Steve Thomas, Alex East, and Jamal Forrest are here today, and how are you guys holding up after this one?
I mean, it was expected. You know, we all called a loss. We all thought it was going to be ugly to one extent or another. It's not. It feels bad right now because we're recording this 10 minutes after the game ended. It feels bad, but this is also. It feels like this is what was supposed to happen, what we knew was going to happen, rather.
Yeah, but even though I knew it, Steve, and even though I expected it, it stings hard because it's the Cowboys, and those losses always hurt more than. If we lost to Tampa Bay or some other team.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Somebody on Twitter asked if during the game, if there really still is a Redskins-Cowboys rivalry. And being down here in Texas, I can tell you that Cowboy fans, at least, don't really think of it as a rivalry anymore.
Right.
We do,
right.
But they really don't. And granted, Cowboy fans are mostly arrogant and stupid. And they're definitely bandwagoners. They're not very good fans, but still, they just don't view us as a rivalry really anymore because we've been so bad for so long.
Right. I kind of said the same thing from a different perspective. I forgot who I was talking to. It was yesterday, but just like this rivalry is kind of important to one side now because the other side has been completely mediocre and inconsistent for a long period of time. It doesn't really make a difference. I mean, as you can see today, you saw what they did. They walked in here like it was nothing and put up 400-plus yards on us, and Dak only had 4 incompletions. So it's frustrating. But
it's very frustrating, yes.
As the announcer said, there were times there was just no resistance at all. So we'll get into all of that. There were definitely some bright spots. So, Steve, do you want to hit us with stats up front or something?
Sure.
Or
yeah,
let's
absolutely.
do that first.
Okay. On the day, Case Keenum was 26 of 37 for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, quarterback rating 103.5. Adrian Peterson was the leading rusher, 10 carries, 25 yards, 2.5 yards per attempt. As a team, the Redskins were 17 for 47 yards or 2.8 yards per attempt, and that includes Steven Sims with 3 for 16 on. He had a jet sweep and another handoff in there. Terry McLaurin was 5 receptions, 62 yards. He was the leading receiver, 1 touchdown. Long 27, 9 targets. A couple of those misses weren't his fault. None of those misses were really his fault. Chris Thompson was next, 5 for 48. Trey Quinn, 4 for 36. Vernon Davis, 3 for 29. Paul Richardson, 3 for 16, 1 touchdown. Jeremy Sprinkle, 1 for 11. Wendell Smallwood, 2 for 9. Adrian Peterson, 2 for 7. Steven Sims, 1 for 3. Dallas on offense, like Jamal mentioned, looked very good. Dak Prescott, 26 for 30, 269 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, quarterback rating 123.5. And let me tell you, but for that interception, he might have had another perfect quarterback rating again this week. Ezekiel Elliott, 23 carries, 111 yards, 4.8 yards per attempt. Dak Prescott outrushed the entire Redskins offense all by himself. He was 5 carries, 69 yards. So, yeah, think about that. Devin Smith, three receptions, 74 yards. He was the 74 yards. He was the leading receiver. Had the 1 long touchdown pass, 51 yards. We'll get to that. The immortal Jason Witten, 4 for 25, 1 touchdown. that's just mind-boggling to me. And we'll knock out the defensive stats here too. Landon Collins was the leading tackler on the day, 12 tackles, 9 solo. Monte Nicholson 9 tackles, 7 solo. John Bostic 7 tackles. It goes down from there. The 1 sack was Ryan Kerrigan, who finally got on the board.
Hey.
And he also had another quarterback hit after that. And that was defense, folks. Monte Nicholson with 1 interception.
Yeah, it was a great play, though. Let's start maybe with Redskins offense this week, because defense was kind of an S show, as we all know. So we can finish up with that. Redskins offense, we saw Peterson for the first time. We definitely saw continued good performances from McLaurin. Why don't we start with what went right on offense today? I mean, what did you guys see that was going well?
Go ahead, Steve.
Jamal just laughed.
Well,
I was
Terry
actually
McLaurin,
yawning, unfortunately.
Terry McLaurin seems to be legit. He seems to be a legit number 1 receiver. I think that's what went right. You know, he's
he's already beating Josh Doxson's career output at this point.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's true, but he just seems to be a legit NFL number 1 receiver. He's got the speed. You know, he showed that he can run routes today. He's not just a deep ball, run fly patterns all the time. You know, because the Cowboy corner that was covering him, had his speed. Basically could match McLaurin's speed. But McLaurin, he really picked up his game in the second half especially. So that went right to me. Other than that, nothing else went right. I thought Adrian Peterson did what he could in the face of absolute garbage of a game by the Redskins offensive line. Other than Case Keenum was okay. He had some misreads. He had some bad throws. He wasn't great. He's about what you'd expect out of Case Keenum. And other than that, I don't know what to say.
I want fans to think back to what they saw when Kirk was our quarterback a couple of years ago. And it's really the same kind of offense. You can't expect this line to block very well for the run. And on the pass, they're going to dink and dunk their way. A lot of passes at Chris Thompson. I'm happy with McLaurin. I mean, he's been pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't have anybody who's going to get the ball deep accurately, and that's going to kill us.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of Thompson, by the way, you just brought up Thompson trying to dink and dunk up the field. I thought they were trying to get him killed early in this game. I mean, things were just getting blown up in the backfield. They were trying to shoot it off to him on the sidelines, and it just wasn't working.
Your classic need 15, get 14 type plays, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It just seemed like, the dink and dunk wasn't working. Everything was getting blown up before it had a chance to develop. Not a good game on offense.
Well, here's one thing that I would like to mention that since we were talking about positives real quickly, it's not much, but at the same time, you got to realize for us, Redskins fans in general, if you haven't noticed, you're seeing a lot of Terry McLaurin, you're seeing a lot of Paul Richardson, you're seeing a lot of Kelvin Harmon, you're seeing a lot of Trey Quinn. And then Jeremy Sprinkle's getting his time with Jordan Reed out. The whole point of me mentioning these players is there is no politics behind who they're putting on the field. So it doesn't matter what round you were drafted in. They're making sure that you get time. They're trying to use you as best as they can. They even had Steven Sims in there. They use him more as a running weapon. But at the same time, you see that there's no politics involved. The coaches, for what it's worth, they're making sure that they're getting the best players on the field for whatever it is that they're trying to run. And right now, they trust the younger guys way more than anyone expected. But it's also a good thing, too, because moving forward, there's some pieces to work there with. It is 0-2, and that's not a good start, especially for you to be 0-2 in the division. However, moving forward, you have something to look forward to on the offense.
Yeah, you know what? Can I just say, too, Trey Quinn, my goodness, this guy. 4 receptions, 36 yards, not blowing the stat sheet up or anything, but awesome output today. I mean, especially in that 4th down conversion to keep that drive alive in the first half, I guess it was. He's been doing some good things. Definitely another positive.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't scare anybody.
No.
He
might also be getting lost in the attention to other people, too. He might be the beneficiary of that.
Look, he's a good receiver. I mean, he's never going to be, like Jarvis Landry. That's just not who he's going to be. I mean, I'm glad he's on the team. He's outperforming his draft status. He's Mr. Irrelevant, and, I'm glad he's part of the team. But the only player who really scares anybody on this offense is McLaurin. You know,
Right,
and
it's not
AP at this point is solid, you know, but he just can't do anything. The way the old offensive line is playing, he just has no room to do anything. You know, so it's really the Terry McLaurin show in terms of things opposing defenses have to worry about, it seems to me.
Right. If you look at how AP performs, it's a lot of bobbing and weaving behind the line of scrimmage to get 3 yards. Whereas
He didn't have any choice.
Yeah, a decent line, he'd be doing that a couple yards upfield. He'd probably get 5 to 6 yards on those plays. And we just don't have that kind of line. That's the issue.
Yeah, and that is a big issue. Another thing not helping that whole situation is the penalties, I think. So we had 3 holding penalties last week on the offense. We had 3 more in the first half, I think, this week. What was the total? Do you have that number, Steve?
Yeah, I do. I've got 7 total penalties. 3 of those were offensive holding penalties. 2 more were defensive holding penalties.
Yeah.
There, at the end of the day, by my count, Dallas actually had more penalties than the Redskins. I counted 8 on them. But you know, it looked to me like the refs missed multiple holding calls on Dallas that just went uncalled.
On the big run by Dak Prescott, they missed like 2. It was insane how much they missed there.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a conspiracy theory against the Redskins. I just think it's poor officiating, you know, more or less.
It's a hockey league officiating this, so
Man, we
know how
about
that goes.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Yeah, so anyway, that's penalties. I mean, the holding calls are just a joke at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't understand how they can't get this fixed. I really don't. I mean, Bill Callahan, supposedly the best offensive line coach in the game. None of us here are offensive line experts at all. I just don't understand how you can have so many holding calls. I mean, they have talent. You know, Brandon Scherf got 2 all by himself today. You know, and I mean, it's usually Morgan Moses that gets these. Morgan didn't have any, but, you know, now we have Scherf all of a sudden. So it's the offensive line has just been in crisis for 2 weeks by the nature of their play, in my opinion.
For 3 years.
Yeah, but they've been better, you know.
But you know what's even crazier? Listen to this. Most of the problems are coming on the right side of the ball. What the players that's been here the longest are having the most issues. I've never understood that. Like, you would have expected most of the problems to come on the left side of the line, with an inexperienced guard and tackle who's 37, but it takes some time. He needs some time to get acclimated back to the game.
I thought he was 137. I didn't know he was only 37.
Yeah, basically old as hell. But he's like, the right side is having the most issues, and I do not understand it. Like, what could possibly we like you said, we're not offensive line gurus, but I would really like to know how is this occurring so often and so frequently on that side.
They aren't playing well, you know.
No.
Sometimes it's as simple as that, you know. I don't know what to say about it. I mean, they just aren't playing well. What can you say? I mean, look, I'd never expect, I don't think any of us expected this offense to be explosive or even to be very good. You know, this year there were a ton of question marks. The quarterback was a question mark. The running game was a question mark. I mean, we hadn't seen Darius Geis, you know, play at all. We love him, nice guy, all of that, but we hadn't seen him play. The receivers were a huge question mark. You know, they basically had no experience with the exception of Paul Richardson. And all that's kind of proven true. They're inconsistent, but really, the big disappointment, like Jamal, if you can pinpoint one biggest disappointment, I think Jamal's right. The right side of the offensive line, those guys are supposed to be the stalwarts because they've been there the longest time, and they just haven't looked good for 2 weeks.
No, I think the offense has performed as I kind of expected. You know, we're putting up, 21 this week, 27 last week. Those are around the numbers you would have hoped for with all the questions we had. But...
And with those numbers, you would have thought we'd be 2-0. Like,
right. If you told me we'd put up those numbers, yeah, exactly right, Jamal.
Yeah, on average, I think we talked about this in a previous episode. On average, you just need like 22 points to win if your defense can hold out a little bit. Yeah. This defense, surprisingly, what was seen as a strength on paper is not holding out at all. So maybe that's a good segue then to flop on over to the other side of the ball.
Well, I actually have one thing on offense I want to bring up real quick.
By all means.
All right, we were down 31-14 at one point. Why wasn't Haskins in there at that point? That's the ideal time to give a rookie some play time. That is perfect rookie play time.
That's not the way Jay rolls, and you know that.
No, but that's the way you should roll. That's what you should do.
I hear you. I don't know. I just don't think Jay is going to do it.
I'll give you. Go ahead.
No, I just said maybe, later in this year, if this keeps happening and they're, like 2-10 or something, yeah, sure, he's going to do it. I'm not disagreeing with you, Alex. It would have been good to get him some play experience, but I just don't think that's Jay Gruden.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, you probably like that's a legitimate question to ask, knowing who the backup quarterback is. I think, and I was just gonna piggyback on what you were saying, Steve. Basically, it's just the strength that like you're technically you're not out of the game yet. And when you're not out of the game yet, and the quarterback wasn't necessarily playing bad, there's no reason to be that trigger happy to bench Keenum. It's not necessarily his fault that the defense gave up.
Oh no, I'm not blaming Keenum.
No. I'm just saying the mindset. I know. Like I'm saying, I acknowledge that that's a good question I have. It's just off the strength that Jay Gruden wouldn't operate that way because of things like he wouldn't see it that way. He'll see it as the fact that he knows his offense is doing the best they could, but it's only limited. It's very limited given the fact that the defense cannot get a stop. That's all I'm saying. So
I think you're right in that, they weren't ever really out of the game until the bitter end. Once they got that third touchdown,
sure,
they were kind of in it briefly, and at that point you're not going to bench your starting quarterback. They weren't really out of it until the last series.
It's just to me, you need to find places for a kid like that to play, and the odds against you winning that game going into the fourth were infinitesimal. So.
Oh, one other thing I'd like to point out before we flip over, Steven Sims. Now, what we saw out of Sims today, he had the jet sweeps.
I love those, by the way.
This is the type of thing that he did in college, okay? This is how Kansas used him. Kansas used him exactly like this, and so that kid is a playmaker, and I think we're going to see more of that. And obviously, clearly, Redskins watch his college film, and they know this. They know that that's how he plays, and they know he's explosive in that manner. So I do think that is a new wrinkle that we could see from him.
I dig
kind
it.
of on a long-term basis going forward.
All in. If we're running a triple option with Steve Sims doing reverse sweeps and shit like that, love it. That's fun.
Yeah, nice.
I agree. I'm sorry for the late response. I do agree, though. Like, Steven Sims has that he has that type of, I guess, game where you can get him in open space. He just has to calm down because he had an opportunity to score a touchdown on that second end around or handoff where he tripped going into, I think, the tight end. I can't remember who it was, but he has to calm down. Like, I understand he's excited, but if you just read that guy and have a way where you manipulate the defensive back and have him go inside and then use your blocker to have him seal the edge for you, you know what I'm saying? That's a walk-in touchdown. But just calm down a little.
Yep.
Nice. Well said. Okay, moved into the other side of the ball. Interesting. Kind of a weird game again. Started it okay this week, ended not so much okay. I mean, early in the game, we forced it a punt on their first drive, got an interception from them after that, forced them to punt again, and then essentially at that point they scored on every drive they had from there on out to the rest of the game. But just a lot of sloppiness. I saw a lot of really poor arm tackle attempts. It just wasn't. It was not a tightly played game. They did not play up to their competition. What can you really say? I mean, it was an S show by the end.
Here's what I can say. I think the defensive front seven has been overrated by this fan base. I've never really bought into the idea that this is an elite defensive front seven. This is the third time I've seen this defensive line get dominated by a decent team. They got dominated by the Falcons in the preseason when the starters matched up with the starters. The Eagles wore them down and dominated them for about 3 quarters, roughly, last week. And really most of the game they got dominated by Dallas, with the exception of the first couple drives. So I don't think – and I refuse – like I did last week, I refuse to think that Jonathan Allen, as good as he is responsible for all of this. Because for one thing, Allen played against the Falcons. But I just think in spite of how good it looks on paper – the results that they've shown us has not shown me that this is anywhere near as good as what the fans have thought we all had.
I don't disagree with you, but at the same time, I think that the core issue comes down to a lack of good depth behind our 2 starters right now, normally 3 starters. But I think that you're putting the same 2 or 3 guys out for the entire game. It's no wonder they're getting exhausted by the second half.
I couldn't disagree with you more. I mean, look, the starters haven't played well.
No,
they haven't played well.
They play okay in the first quarter and a half, right? The first 2 games they've played well. in that first quarter and a half.
They played in the first quarter, so what?
They need
game.
to rest for a while, and then they need to come back in, and they don't have anyone to help them rest.
An excuse. I think that's an excuse, man. I just don't think that this defensive line is what we thought.
Well, here's one thing.
That's what I think.
Here's one thing, because it was on my mind during the game as well, because like you said, we talked about this last week. I don't know what the numbers are with J.J. Watt out of the game for the Texans. But my assumption is when you have, and I'm not comparing Jonathan Allen to J.J. Watt. What I'm saying is when your best player on the defensive line, or even in one aspect of the game, when your best player is out there who makes other players drastically better, that sometimes plays a factor. With that being said, Jonathan Allen is the better defensive line out of everybody that we have. The impact that he makes for this team and for this defense is yet to be determined because he hasn't played 2 full games. He missed one game completely, and he missed a half with the Eagles. So what I'm saying is it may possibly be overrated completely. It may possibly be that case. But at the same time, we don't know how they truly play, even though we kind of seen it last year, which is unfortunate. But it was also a whole different defense. But we don't know how they're going to play this year until we can get these guys healthy. But that's making an excuse, and there's really no reason to do that, knowing how I felt after this game. Like, they played terrible. There's no excuses to be made for these players.
Yeah, and the other thing I think about this defensive front seven is, John Bostic is okay. I think he's ultimately sort of just a guy. You know, he's not a plus. He's not a plus.
You know, we love just a guy types on this defense.
Yeah, we have a whole team full of them. We have a whole team full of them. But I don't think the linebackers are really helping anybody. Reuben Foster would have been a massive upgrade for all his personal foibles and all that stuff. If you get him on the field, I think he would have been a massive upgrade at the weak side position. But I just don't think that this front seven is what we thought, and I don't think it's ever going to be what we thought. We've got a bunch of decent offenses coming up. They may look better against, like, the Dolphins. Maybe we can win that game.
I think the Bears, with all due respect, are a step down from the last two offensive we played. So.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. For sure. We'll see.
We might see something a little better next weekend or next Monday.
So here's one other thing, though. On the deep touchdown to Devin Smith, I was going back and forth with Mark Bullock, our buddy Mark Bullock, trying to figure out exactly what happened, and Will Blackman, former Redskins defensive back, saw this conversation, chimed in, and he explained what Mark Bullock and I were struggling with. Blackman knew, obviously, instantaneously, because he's a pro, and we're just a bunch of knuckleheads on the internet. So what Dallas had on that play was they had a shallow crosser and a high crosser, and then they had Smith on a post, okay? And so we had Monte Nicholson, free safety. Josh Norman was on Smith, and then they had the corner on the other side and Landon Collins. And so what happened here is that Monte Nicholson came up from his free safety position to take the high crosser, leaving Josh Norman alone on the post. Now, my initial thought on it was that Nicholson probably should have stayed deep because as a safety, you never, ever give up the deep ball. But what Blackman said was that, no, Nicholson did the right thing in coming up to take the high crosser, and Josh Norman just wasn't on top of the route. And the other thing he pointed out that both Mark and I missed totally was that the other corner on the backside had a completely empty zone. He was supposed to rotate all the way over on top and help out on the route. And so that's what happened.
You're talking about DRC.
Yeah, on the other side, right.
I said the same thing. I said there was no way Josh Norman should be by himself. So if you had Nicholson rolling on the underneath route and DRC had nobody in his area, you sprint downfield to the deepest man. I thought it was going to be impossible for, and like mentally, then I was like, it may be asking too much of DRC, but clearly not. That's his responsibility.
Yeah, and he had a name for it. He called it Yankee check. That's what Will Blackman called that play, Yankee check. So that was Will Blackman's position on it. Now, it looked to me like there's some bad communication there, or at least Josh Norman, maybe it wasn't communication, maybe he just misread it, because the TV announcer pointed out that he kind of hesitated halfway through that route, expecting the safety to be there, which clearly he shouldn't have been there. So bad play all around. Norman didn't provide good coverage. Looks like DRC blew it, at least according to Will Blackman. Who knows? just bad effort all around.
Now, and I'm not going to question Blackman because we've talked to Blackman on our show in the past. I trust him. He's a smart dude. The thing that blows my mind on this is what, the second or third time that we've seen Norman on a deep ball where he kind of just can't cover one-on-one deep anymore. Like, for a $20 million corner, he is not doing what you need a $20 million corner to do. And it's concerning.
He's never been that guy, really.
Yeah.
He's just not. That's why Odell Beckham would get the best of him because Beckham's just faster. He never has been a speed corner.
No.
So yeah, I mean, he's had a rough couple weeks. I thought one of those last week wasn't really on him, but certainly he bears responsibility. At least some responsibility, probably the primary responsibility for the touchdown today.
For that one, and he had that blown one today too. That probably could have also been a touchdown if it had been, thrown a little better.
Yeah.
So I worry about the whole Josh Norman situation, and I've worried about that for years.
That having been said, I mean, look, the other starter was out.
Yeah.
The slot guy was out. Jimmy Moreland's a rookie. I mean, we all love him, but I mean, it would not go well if he had to start covering number one receivers. It just wouldn't.
That should be malpractice if they do something like that.
Well, here's the thing: if he fails at $50,000 a game versus Josh Norman, who gets paid $1.5 million a game, I can live with that.
Nobody cares about that.
I care about that.
Well, you do, but the coaches don't. Okay, they just want people to play well, and nobody cares about who's making what. The fact of the matter is, Jimmy Moreland would be awful, at that. He's filling his role nicely, but he's just not ready for all that. I don't think so. I mean, the secondary's just banged up again. I just can't believe it. I can't. I thought we were going to see the Aaron Colvin era there for a while because DRC went out with an ankle injury in the first half.
Yeah, he was limping most of the game.
They had to put DeShazer Everett in at corner.
Yeah,
for God's sakes. I mean, Jesus. I just don't know what to say about that. But anyway, so there you go. That was Will Blackman's view on that play.
By the way, Everett did okay. Pressed into whatever he was pressed into. So I want to give him credit there.
Yeah, and he wasn't out there very long as a corner because DRC came back in. And by the way, I mean, the idea that we're happy that Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie is out there starting says something, okay? They signed him, toward the end of the offseason, and he's
good.
old,
not
and,
good.
He retired halfway through last season for the Raiders. I mean, it's not like he's the future. So that's not, I'm more concerned about Quentin Dunbar, frankly.
Yeah, he can't stay healthy anymore.
Oh, man. Look.
It's the same old story.
I'm about to say, thank you, Sean. I was about to say that. It's the same old story. There's nothing we can really say. The corners, like Fabian Moreau. You know what? I forgot if it was us or if I heard this on the radio. But you're dealing with Fabian Moreau, Jordan Reed, who else were we talking about? Darius Geis. And I'll just leave with those three because I can't remember the rest of the names. But you're dealing with these three players, and maybe Morgan Moses, but these guys are coming out of college. We're dealing with injuries. And we choose to rely on these guys for, a heavy part of our game plan. And just in general, I'm saying this to say, like, you have these cornerbacks, you have these guys at other positions on the offensive side of the field, and you can't really count on them because they stay hurt. Like, these are guys that we knew that was hurt coming out, and you're hoping that you can change things as become a fresh professional. And that's not fair to them. But it's also not very smart by your end as well to hope that these guys are just going to somehow be 100% healthy. Like, that's just taking a big risk. But with that being said, you got Fabian Rose out, Quentin Dunbar, who's been hurt the last 2 years. You're kind of you're in trouble, but this kind of mess was made on your own.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, I just don't think Redskins should be relying on a guy like Jordan Reed, for example. We love Jordan Reed. He truly is a mismatch.
No,
when he's out there.
You should be planning on him being your number 2, and when he's in, it's a bonus, and then have a number 3 behind him.
I mean,
that'd be my mentality about a guy like that.
But the problem is he's making too much money, to not be on the field all the time. I personally, I think I always thought for months now, I thought they should have traded him.
Sure.
Get what you can and move on. But I mean, that was never going to happen. It was just me babbling. But as a general rule, you're right, Jamal. I mean, they are drafting all these guys with injury histories, and shockingly enough, they get injured.
And
Right.
we're not good at health ourselves. That's the other part of this.
I'm just not. I don't know if I'm really willing to blame the medical staff for all this. They seem to be the convenient whipping boy right now. Oh, it's the medical staff's fault. But look, I mean, it's not the medical staff's problem that Jonathan Allen's leg got caught and at a funny angle. It's not the medical staff's problem that Alex Smith shattered his leg into a million pieces. It's not the medical staff's fault that Darius Skies tore his meniscus. I just don't. I have a hard time believing what Trent Williams is saying.
I'm not a believer in luck. I don't think luck exists. I think there's a reason for everything. You just got to dig deep to find it. And if you're not going to if you don't want to dig deep and find it, you shouldn't be in charge of this team. So
I kind of do believe in luck. I'm not gonna lie to you. I only say that in this regard because there are teams who they deal with injuries, but they don't deal with them to the level of others, and they also get lucky. These are also guys who get lucky in the postseason as well because their key players are still healthy. Sometimes you deal with players, and I'm not specifically talking about the Redskins when I'm talking about players or teams who have their key guys injured, because there are other teams throughout this league who has that done. It's just in the sense that when that happens to a team, I just feel like it's bad luck in that sense. Sometimes you do have to get lucky throughout the season. And breaks got to go your way during games by itself, not just the injury factor. So just in that regard, I do think luck plays a factor.
Yeah, and I will agree too, but I think I'm with Alex on this one. There's a lot of smoke here for you to tell me there's no fire with the medical staff or with conditioning coaches or whatever the case may be. It's a lot of smoke in the form of injured players for there to not be some sort of issue, at least in my opinion. But
I mean, are you blaming the medical staff for Smith, Geis, Allen, Reed, and all those concussions?
Not even necessarily the medical staff. I honestly would be more curious about what the strength and conditioning coaches are doing. I mean, we had a lot of lower leg injury problems last year. Not just the breaks, but we have constant tears and strains and hyperextensions, it seems. I don't know. Some seems to be, I don't know. Folks' bodies just aren't holding up.
I'm on Jamal's side on this. I just think they've had horrible luck.
They definitely have.
Well, they're drafting guys that are injury prone.
I don't think that's part of it.
I don't know if I'd call Darius Skies injury prone.
He had an injury in college that should have been a flag or could have been a flag.
Yeah, maybe it was a flag, man. Yeah. That's why he got drafted in the second round, But they're just drafting guys like that. Here, I have a question for you guys. I've been thinking about this. Where, I'm wondering where the Redskins rank in sort of the dregs of the NFL ranking, just generally speaking. Because we've got a few franchises that are just elite, right? And have been for years. Obviously, the Patriots, the Saints,
right?
There's probably two or three other. Green Bay has been up there, but the real dregs of the NFL, are we really down there with the true dregs, or are we just kind of being woe is me because we're Redskins fans?
You knew the answer before you even asked, buddy.
Yeah,
I know what I think.
I think you know the answer to that one, man.
We are at the bottom of the barrel, and like the only thing that keeps us afloat is the mindset, I guess that's the word, or the mentality from upper management and the coaching staff that we are not in rebuild mode. We are ready to win now. We're trying to win now, and that mindset trickles into the fan base as well it's nobody's fault. But if you don't acknowledge it from the top or from the coaching staff that maybe we need to focus on younger players and developing these key guys to make sure that 2 years from now or a year from now that they're ready to go full speed and they're ready to go to become a part of this new culture or culture of a team, then maybe this things can be better. But no, we're always in a win now mode, so therefore our mindset is different. But no, we're truly at the bottom. We haven't really won much.
Yeah, I would agree with Jamal, and I would actually say that another thing that's kind of kept us from pretending we're with the dregs is that we have a couple of trophies from the 80s that we care about, and you look at the other drag teams like the Lions, the Raiders, the Cardinals, and those are some of the older teams in the dregs. even though they're old like us, they've never had that dynasty that we had. I mean, maybe you could say the Raiders with Madden, but they won, one championship in that time?
Yes.
That's it?
Yes.
The Bills, they had 4 years where they lost the championship. Like, a lot of the dregs teams that we're with, none have had that 10-year span of success like we had. So we're lucky in that respect. But no, we're in the dumps. We're a dumpster fire of a team that just got lucky for a short span.
In terms of PR, I think we are the dregs. I don't think any team in this league has worse PR than us.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the name
We're
issues
32 out of 32 on PR.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. With, raw talent and skill on the field, we're not quite the worst. But nobody is more hated than the Redskins, I think.
Oh, yeah.
See, the Redskins does this thing every year where they spray Febreze over the bad odor. Or they put like a car freshener in the
Are you saying we're a frat, bro?
Right.
So what they do is they confuse people. They're like, man, ain't nothing going on. We good. But lo and behold, once that stuff starts to expire, the smell, which is doing pretty quickly this year, you realize that you were deceived.
I'm just kind of scanning through the standings here so far, and I'm just looking at franchises. Definitely the Cardinals have been a drag. But they were in a Super Bowl. And
they've had more than a few years of success too.
Yeah, they have. The Lions have been one of the drags of the NFL.
Sure.
That been said, they have a franchise quarterback. They haven't won anything, but they've had reason to be. They had an all-time great receiver for a long time, but they're a drag, right? And so then you've got Jacksonville. I would have said, except in the past couple of years, they've been good. The Bengals, maybe you're down there. The Bills, who are 2-0,
0-2.
No, they're 2-0.
Oh, did they win?
Apparently so. Yeah, I'm looking at.
Oh, you said who's 2-0? Excuse me.
The Buffalo.
Oh yeah, yep, they 2-0. Beat the Giants.
Yeah, but this season aside, I mean, I think those are the ones, right? The Browns have probably been the worst drag of the NFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can say the Browns aren't number 32, but they have reason for hope now. I don't know. I don't mean to be such a downer about it, but I mean, we're like 30, ranked maybe 30, 31 on the scale, I think, just sort of as a general proposition,
Probably.
which is just awful. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I would agree.
I didn't mean to bring the show down, but
No, it's fair. That's coming after 7 wins last year. It's important to You're calling us dregs when we're not that bad, and yet we all know it's true. The truth is, we really are the dregs.
Season to season, I mean, we're going to be in there mediocre and all of that, and we don't usually end up 2-14, but kind of year after year after year after year with all the chaos and all the the national media laughs at us.
Oh yeah,
absolutely,
for the most part. So, but anyway, back to the game. I don't know what else to say about the defense. I thought like we said, the defensive line was horrible. The secondary, had its moments. At the end of the day, Ezekiel Elliott got his numbers. It went pretty much exactly how we thought. Which is sad to say.
Exactly. Right. Let's do some game balls and cut this one off then.
Do we have to?
We do. And you know what? I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of controversy on these game balls today. There wasn't much controversy last week either. I'm going for offense. Give it to the obvious guy. That's McLaurin for me. Didn't call him last week, so I feel better doing it this week. And defense, yeah, let's give it to Nicholson. Let's give it to Nicholson, the guy that comes away with the pick.
Okay. Oh, am I next?
Next.
Yeah, I mean, I think Terry McLaurin is the only answer on offense. I'm struggling to find anyone on defense who deserves a game ball. I mean, I guess, Sean, your Nicholson award is probably – and he got the interception because certainly nobody else really deserves anything. So I hate to copy you, Sean, but out of a lack of anyone else, I'd be kind of embarrassed to get a game ball for a game like this. On defense, but I'll give it to Nicholson too.
You can give it to Payne. Payne kind of caused that interception, but
you know what though, with as bad as the defensive line was today, I'm not giving any of them bums a game ball. Sorry.
Fair enough.
I'll go next. So I'll make mine quick because there's really no need to elaborate. Terry McLaurin on offense, once again showed that he's a tough receiver and a very good and underrated guy coming into the regular season. So Terry McLaurin on offense. Defensively, I'm going to go Monte Nicholson. Not because of how he played on defense, but because he shows some skills as a return man. And that's the only reason why he gets the game ball. He has absolutely no reason for him playing defensively, why he should get a game ball, and neither should the other 10 players. But he showed that he can, if the ball somehow ends up in his hands, he can get at least 10 to 20 yards. So therefore, he gets the game ball.
Yeah, let's put him in on punts and maybe see what he does there then.
Yeah, let's see what he can do.
Yeah. All right, so I agree with you guys on McLaurin. He's really the only guy in offense who did anything. I'm going to throw in a wrench, though, and say Kerrigan on defense. He did get that sack there. So he's, 10 away from the team record now? So
wow, is that true?
Something like that.
Yeah, it is true. It is true.
The team record, according to Rick Snyder, is 98 because who is it that actually has it? The first year wasn't counted.
Dexter.
Dexter. It's Dexter. Thank you.
Interesting.
I couldn't remember if it was Dexter or Charles Mann.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know, the NFL did not count sacks for decades and decades, and they just
an absurd amount of time that they didn't count it.
Yeah, I don't know the exact year, but it was like
1970 something.
Yeah, like Dexter's second or third year or something in the league.
Yeah, so according to our buddy Rick, Dexter has another 6 on the total that it brings it to 98 for him. So
wow.
If Kerrigan could possibly beat that in his career. So
Probably will.
Yeah. Here or not,
so.
I don't know, but
if you need 6 more, come on, of course you can do it.
One other point I've been thinking about: why isn't Steven Sims returning punts? Can somebody help me? I don't know why Trey Quinn is doing it. I don't think Trey Quinn's awful at it, but Sims is a guy who's explosive.
Yeah, Quinn's fine, but Sims seems like a guy who could blow it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a waste just to have Sims back there on kickoffs, when 75% of them aren't returnable anyway.
Also, Quinn should be out there on first down every time. So why get him beat up one play before?
Yeah. So just a random thought.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Something to mull over then in this coming week as we prepare for, who is it this week, Chicago?
Yep. Chicago on Monday night.
The Bears.
Bears on Monday.
I'm sure the Bears' defensive line is just chopping
their beats.
Yeah.
Truth be told, we'll be 100% fine if they stop the game by halftime. Like if we can win the first half and they end it in the first half, I personally I'll be fine. I could go to sleep, drunk and happy. And I'll call it a win.
Right.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, we got much more analysis then coming about that Bears game as we prepare this week. So, what is it? Gets posted on Thursday now? So Thursday we'll have our preview episode up for y'all.
Yeah.
And then we'll obviously be back for you guys after the game on Monday. So until then, check us out, hogsty.com, bigheadsmedia.com. We'll see you next time. Cut.
All right.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelly.
And I'm Brittany.
And we are the hosts of The Faves of Our Lives.
We're a fairly new podcast that focuses on everyone's favorite everythings.
Each season we talk about a different category, whether it be movies, music, books, etc.
This season, we are discussing your favorite TV shows. Shows like The Office,
Dexter,
Dawson's Creek,
Saved by the Bell, and much more.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and many other podcast platforms.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Faves of Our L1 and let us know all about your faves. That's The Faves of Our L and the number 1.
We hope to become one of your faves soon.